February 19, 1945. 9:02. Yellow Beach 2, Iwo Jima. Private Takashi Yamamoto squints through the narrow concrete opening of his bunker. His hands tremble not from fear, but from the constant vibration of explosions that have been shaking the island for 3 days. Through the smoke and volcanic sand fog, he sees something that makes his blood run cold. 8 American Sherman tanks emerge from the waves like metal beasts, but there's something different about them. Something deeply wrong. Where there should be a main cannon, he sees long, menacing tubes pointing directly at his position. Yamamoto served in Manchuria. He survived Saipan. He knows tanks. But he's never seen anything like this. His sergeant, a 15-year veteran of the Imperial Army, whispers a single word that echoes through the underground bunker: impossible. In 36 days, these 8 tanks and their successors would make the impossible become terrifying reality. They would destroy 1,000 Japanese bunkers, kill 30% of the entire enemy garrison, save 5,000 American lives. And all this with a weapon that Japan never imagined existed at that scale, at that power, at that level of mechanical cruelty. This is the story of how America's best-kept secret in the Pacific transformed Japan's most fortified island into a literal hell. And it all began 8 months earlier, in a quiet barracks in Hawaii, where ordinary men were about to create the metal demon that would change the war forever. The tropical sun burns the concrete of Schofield Barracks as Colonel George Unmacked walks between empty hangars that smell of diesel oil and heated metal. Unmacked is not an ordinary man. At 42, he possesses something rare in the armed forces, a mind that sees problems as mathematical puzzles waiting to be solved. And the Marine Corps has just handed him the deadliest puzzle of the Pacific War. Saipan cost 3,000 American lives. Peleliu would be worse. The reports crossing his desk every morning paint the same bloody picture: reinforced concrete Japanese bunkers, interconnected cave positions, tunnels snaking for miles beneath volcanic rock. Each island is a fortress. Each fortress is a graveyard waiting to happen. Grenades don't work. Naval explosives destroy the surface but leave the tunnels intact. Soldiers die by the thousands trying to clear each bunker individually, one at a time, with demolition explosives and suicidal courage. There has to be a better way. There has to be a weapon that can reach inside those caves, burn through the tunnels, transform those underground fortresses into death chambers for those inside, not for those trying to get in. Unmacked knows flamethrowers. Every Marine knows them. The M2-2, Corps Standard, is carried on the back, weighs 70 pounds when full, and turns men into walking targets. Effective range is just 60 feet. 60 feet. You need to be close enough to see the enemy's eyes before pulling the trigger. And when you pull that trigger, when those 1,000-degree flames spew from the nozzle, every Japanese sniper within 200 yards knows exactly where you are. Portable flamethrowers have the highest fatality rate of any American military specialty in the Pacific. 62% casualties. More than half the men who carry these weapons into combat never come home. But Unmacked isn't thinking about portable flamethrowers. He's looking at a Sherman tank parked in the corner of the hangar, its iconic silhouette cut against the light coming through the open doors. 33 tons of armored steel, capable of absorbing 50 caliber machine gun fire without a scratch. Could take a flamethrower anywhere on the battlefield and keep the crew alive while doing it. The problem is pure engineering. How do you mount a flamethrower system on a Sherman without compromising its armor? How do you store enough fuel to make it effective? How do you increase the range to something that actually matters in combat? How do you transform a medium tank into a metal dragon that can spit death at distances the Japanese would consider impossible? Unmacked summons the Seabees. Naval Construction Battalion Number 77. These men aren't theoretical engineers with fancy degrees. They're welders, mechanics, technicians who can build bridges under artillery fire and fix tank engines with wire and prayer. If anyone can turn his vision into reality, it's them. For 6 weeks, Schofield Barracks becomes a secret laboratory. Armed guards patrol the perimeter. No photography allowed. No visitors authorized. Inside the locked hangars, welders work 18-hour shifts, arc welding sparks illuminating the darkness like fallen stars. The fundamental problem is space. A Sherman is already cramped with 5 crew members, 75mm ammunition, radio systems, and the Continental R975 radial engine that provides 400 horsepower of raw power. Where do you put fuel tanks containing hundreds of liters of thickened napalm without turning the entire tank into a bomb on treads? The answer comes from a Seabees sergeant named William Hanson. Remove the 75mm cannon. Remove all main ammunition. This frees up massive internal space and reduces weight by over a ton. In place of the cannon, mount the CB-H1 flamethrower system developed by the Chemical Warfare Service. It's a 3-inch diameter reinforced steel tube with an electromechanical ignition mechanism at the tip. Simple, brutal, effective. The fuel tanks are installed where the ammunition racks used to be. 490 liters of total capacity. The fuel isn't ordinary gasoline. It's a special mixture, 80% gasoline, 20% diesel oil, thickened with aluminum soaps to create napalm type B. This gelatinous consistency is critical. Liquid napalm burns fast and spreads too much. Thickened napalm sticks to surfaces, burns slower, reaches higher temperatures, and most importantly, can be projected much farther. The pressurization system uses compressed nitrogen stored in armored cylinders behind the frontal armor. When the operator presses the trigger, nitrogen forces the napalm through the launch tube at pressures reaching 300 psi. At the nozzle, an electrical ignition system lights the fuel at the exact moment it exits the tube. The result is a lance of liquid fire that can reach 150 meters under ideal conditions. 150 meters. That's 7.5 times the range of a portable flamethrower. It's the difference between suicide and tactical effectiveness. It's the difference between dying to clear a bunker and destroying it from a safe distance while remaining protected inside 33 tons of armor. But range is only part of the equation. The true genius of the system is how it delivers the napalm. A portable flamethrower jet is diffuse, almost like spray. The CB-H1 produces a concentrated, coherent jet that maintains structural integrity throughout its entire range. You can aim at a bunker opening 100 meters away and literally throw flames through that opening and into the interior space. The thickened napalm then spreads across internal surfaces, dripping from the ceiling, running down the walls, transforming the entire structure into an oven while consuming all available oxygen. The men inside have 3 options: burn, suffocate, or come out and face rifle fire from the Marines. All 3 result in death. The first prototype is ready in weeks. UNMACT personally supervises live tests at an isolated firing range on Oahu's north coast. They built a replica Japanese bunker using intelligence specifications from Saipan: 2-foot-thick concrete walls, reinforced roof, narrow gun port, escape tunnel in the back. Mannequins are placed in internal defensive positions. The modified Sherman advances to 120 meters away. The flamethrower operator, a corporal named Robert Chen, aligns his sight with the bunker opening. His finger finds the trigger. There's a deep, mechanical roar when the pressurization system activates. Then the world transforms into fire. The napalm lance exits the nozzle like a living entity, an orange-red river that crosses the space between tank and bunker in less than 2 seconds. It enters through the gun port with surgical precision. Half a second later, flames explode from every opening in the bunker structure like a dragon breathing outward. Black, oily smoke rises in thick columns. When the smoke dissipates, UNMACT and his team cautiously approach. The bunker's exterior looks almost untouched. Small soot stains around the openings. But inside is a carbonized nightmare. The mannequins have been reduced to black, twisted skeletons. The concrete is cracked and baked by extreme heat. Everything wooden has been vaporized. Internal temperature had exceeded 1100 degrees Celsius. Nothing made of flesh could have survived for more than 3 seconds. UNMACT smiles for the first time in weeks. He has just witnessed the birth of the weapon that will change the Pacific War. But he has also just seen a glimpse of the hell he's about to unleash on Japanese soldiers at Iwo Jima. Over the following 2 months, 8 Sherman tanks are fully converted to the Flamethrower configuration. Each receives the official designation M4A3R3, but crews quickly nickname them Zippos, after the popular lighter. The name sticks. Soon, every Marine in the Pacific Fleet knows about the Zippos, even if they've never seen one. The secret is kept with almost obsessive paranoia. No photographs of the modified tanks are allowed. Technical documentation is classified as top secret. Crews are instructed never to discuss the weapon in letters home. Japan cannot know what's coming. They can't have time to develop countermeasures, to design defenses, to psychologically prepare their troops for the kind of warfare the Zippos will bring. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Pacific, General Tadamaki Kurabayashi stands on Suribachi Hill, looking north across the island that has become his responsibility and likely tomb. Kurabayashi is not a fanatic. He studied in the United States before the war, traveled extensively through America, saw the factories of Detroit, the steel mills of Pittsburgh, the shipyards of San Francisco. He knows exactly the kind of industrial power coming his way. And he knows he cannot win. But he can make the Americans bleed. Can make every meter of Iwo Jima cost so much blood that Washington will hesitate before invading Japan proper. Can transform this small volcanic island of 8 square miles into the costliest battle the Marine Corps has ever faced. Iwo Jima isn't large. You could walk from one end to the other in 3 hours if no one was trying to kill you. But what it lacks in size, it makes up for 1,000 times in strategic importance. It's located exactly 1,200 kilometers from Tokyo, within range of B-29 bombers. The Americans need Iwo Jima as an emergency base for damaged bombers returning from missions over Japan. They need it as an escort fighter base. They need it as a stepping stone for the final invasion of Japan itself. Japan needs to hold it as long as possible. Kurabayashi was given 21,000 soldiers, most of them battle-hardened veterans from other Pacific campaigns. He has mining engineers, tunnel specialists, concrete workmasters. And he has 8 months to transform Iwo Jima into the most heavily fortified position in the Pacific theater of operations. So he begins to dig. The final statistics are mind-boggling. 17.7 kilometers of tunnels. Almost 18 kilometers of underground passages snaking through volcanic rock, connecting bunkers, ammunition depots, command posts, hospitals, barracks. Some tunnels are 90 feet deep. Naval bombs can't reach them. Artillery fire only scratches the surface. 850 fortified cave positions. Each designed for overlapping fields of fire, each designed to be defended to the last man. Kurabayashi's engineers use reinforced concrete imported from Japan, steel beams salvaged from sunken ships, any material that can make these positions virtually indestructible to conventional artillery. Artillery positions are hidden in caves with openings at odd angles that make aerial detection impossible. 140mm guns capable of sinking landing craft at 1,500 meters. 320mm mortars that can obliterate an entire platoon with a single shell. Everything carefully hidden, camouflaged, protected by solid volcanic rock. Kurabayashi's defense plan is revolutionary by Japanese standards. No bonsai charges. No suicidal attacks on the beaches. No glorious death wasted in theatrical gestures of sacrifice. Instead, defense in depth. Let the Americans land. Let them think they have a foothold. Then bleed them with crossfire from hidden positions they can't see, can't locate, can't destroy. Force them to fight for every meter. Force them to pay in blood for every bunker, every cave, every position. Make them count their dead and wonder if this shitty island is really worth it. The island is ready when the bombardment begins. 21,000 Japanese soldiers wait in the tunnels, in the caves, in the deep bunkers. They have food for 3 months. Water for 2. Ammunition enough to fight to the last man. And each of them has sworn to die defending Iwo Jima. None of them will ever surrender. The most intense naval bombardment of the Pacific War begins 3 days before the invasion. 6 battleships, 4 heavy cruisers, 3 light cruisers, 11 destroyers. They form a line 3,000 meters from shore and begin pouring high-explosive steel onto Iwo Jima with a ferocity that makes the island itself tremble. USS Idaho fires its 14-inch guns until the barrels are too hot to touch. Each shell weighs 680 kilograms and carries enough explosive force to destroy an entire building. The Idaho fires 342 of these shells on the first day. Multiply that by 6 battleships and you begin to comprehend the scale of violence being inflicted on this small island. 472 hours. The bombardment continues almost uninterrupted. At night, ships illuminate the island with star shells while continuing to fire. 22,000 tons of high-order explosives fall on Iwo Jima in 3 days. The island disappears under clouds of smoke and volcanic dust. All vegetation is destroyed. The landscape is transformed into a lunar nightmare of overlapping craters and shattered rock. The admirals are satisfied. Nothing could have survived that. Nothing human, at least. They are wrong. In the deep tunnels, Kurabayashi's soldiers wait in darkness, trembling as the world above them transforms into chaos. Solid rock protects them. Solid engineering protects them. When the bombardment finally stops, they emerge from their holes like ants from a kicked anthill, dragging weapons, positioning machine guns, preparing mortars. They suffered less than 5% casualties during the entire bombardment. Over 20,000 Japanese soldiers are still alive, still armed, still determined to transform Iwo Jima into the bloodiest cemetery the Marine Corps has ever seen. The first wave of Marines hits the beaches at exactly 9 in the morning. 8 LST landing ships dump 450 men onto the black volcanic sand in less than 10 minutes. They run up the beach, expecting enemy fire that doesn't come. 50 meters inland. 100 meters. 150. Still no shots. Some Marines start to think that maybe the bombardment really worked. Maybe the Japanese are all dead or in shock or ready to surrender. Then Kurabayashi gives the order. All weapons open fire simultaneously. Machine guns, mortars, artillery, rifles. From positions the Marines can't see, from bunkers that look like rock piles, from caves hidden in the hillsides. The Marines on the beach have nowhere to hide. The volcanic sand is too soft to dig quickly. There are no trees, no rocks, nothing that can stop a bullet. Men fall in droves. Some are hit before even getting out of the landing craft. Others manage 10 steps before being cut in half by machine gun fire. Medics run from man to man, but there are too many wounded and too little cover. The beach transforms into a slaughterhouse. Blood mixes with black sand. Screams of the wounded mix with the constant roar of explosions. It's a hell that will last 36 days. But the Marines keep coming. Wave after wave after wave. They have no choice. They have orders. They have a job to do. And someday, very soon, they'll receive help in the form of 8 tanks that will transform this nightmare battle into something the Japanese never imagined possible. The first Zippos reach shore at 3 in the afternoon on the first day. They disembark from modified LSTs through reinforced ramps, their treads biting the volcanic sand as they slowly climb up the beach. Sergeant James Donovan commands Zippo No. 1. He's sitting in the commander's position, half out of the hatch, watching the carnage around him through binoculars. Marine bodies dot the beach. Some still moving, crawling toward cover that doesn't exist. Mortar explosions create columns of black sand every 5 seconds. Machine gun fire creates ricochet patterns in the shallow water behind them. Donovan is no stranger to combat. He fought at Guadalcanal. Survived Tarawa. But he's never seen anything like this. Never seen so many Marines killed in so little time. Never seen defenses so well prepared, so perfectly positioned to maximize slaughter. He lowers himself into the tank and closes the hatch. The interior of the Zippo smells of oil, sweat, and the slightly chemical smell of napalm in the fuel tanks. His crew is at their positions. Driver, flamethrower operator, machine gun loader, radio operator. All veterans. All trained in the use of this new and terrible weapon. All knowing that in the next few hours they will use fire in a way no American soldier has ever used before. Donovan grabs the radio microphone and contacts the battalion commander. He receives coordinates for 3 bunkers that are massacring Marines trying to advance from the beach. Positions that withstood hours of naval artillery fire without a scratch. Positions that need to be eliminated before more men die. Zippo number 1 turns north and begins climbing the beach slope. The treads struggle in the soft sand for a moment, then find purchase and the tank accelerates. Rifle shots ricochet off the frontal armor with metallic bell sounds. A Type 97 anti-tank grenade detonates against the right tread but fails to penetrate. Wu finally gets his line of sight and releases 2 napalm jets in rapid succession. The bunker transforms into an oven. No one comes out. When Marines finally advance and check the interior 3 hours later, they find 12 carbonized bodies fused together in a corner where they tried to escape the impossible heat. By the end of the first day, the 8 Zippos destroyed 47 enemy positions. 47 bunkers that had resisted days of naval bombardment and hours of ground artillery fire. Eliminated in minutes by a weapon the Japanese had no mental or physical preparation to face. Portable flamethrowers they knew. Portable flamethrowers could be fought. You target them first. You shoot the man carrying the fuel tanks. You force him to get too close and then kill him before he can use his weapon. But a flamethrower mounted on a tank that can shoot fire at 150 meters? That's protected by armor that can resist everything except heavy artillery? That can move faster than a man can run and deliver instant death from a safe distance? There's no tactic for that. No countermeasure. You just die burned alive while the tank remains untouched, smoking its diesel smoke, ready to move to the next target. Night falls over Iwo Jima like a black curtain. The Marines dug defensive positions 200 meters from the beach. It's a precarious position. They can hear the Japanese moving in the tunnels below them, the muffled sound of boots on rock, the dragging of machine guns being repositioned. No one sleeps. No one dares sleep. But for the first time, they have something more than desperate hope. They have the Zippos. And tomorrow, when the sun rises, these metal dragons will begin the work of burning the Japanese out of every hole, every cave, every bunker on this cursed island. Private Yamamoto is still alive in his bunker, but he's no longer on the same side of the island. His original position was evacuated after the bunker next to his was transformed into a crematorium oven. He saw through his observation opening when the napalm entered, saw the flames, heard the screams. He knew 3 of the men in that bunker. They grew up in the same village near Osaka. Now they're ashes. Yamamoto was transferred to a deeper cave position in the center of the island, part of the tunnel system Kurabayashi built so carefully. It's safer here, 30 feet below the surface, with solid rock above and around. But for the first time since arriving at Iwo Jima 8 months ago, Yamamoto feels something he never thought he'd feel. He feels fear. Not fear of dying. Every Japanese soldier has accepted death. It's expected. It's honorable. But fear of how he'll die. Fear of fire. Fear of burning alive, feeling his skin melt, his lungs cook, while there's no escape, no way to fight, just agony until it finally ends. He shares his fear with his sergeant, the veteran who whispered, "Impossible," on the beach. The sergeant spat on the dirt floor of the cave. His name is Kenji Saito and he's served in the Imperial Army since 1930. 15 years of wars. China, Manchuria, Philippines, Saipan. He's seen things that would drive younger men insane. But he's never seen anything like the fire tanks. Saito tells Yamamoto there's no shame in fear. Fear keeps you alert. Fear keeps you alive. But he also says there's no escape. The Americans will clear this island meter by meter. And when they reach this tunnel, they'll send their flames into the depths of the earth and transform the entire system into a death trap. All they can do is sell their lives as dearly as possible. Kill as many Americans as they can before the fire comes. That's it. That's all. It's the only choice left for soldiers of the Emperor at Iwo Jima. The second day begins with fog. Thick, damp fog rolls in from the ocean and covers the island like a shroud. Visibility is reduced to 50 meters. The Zippos can't operate effectively in these conditions. Wu needs to see his targets to hit them accurately. So the tanks wait, engines idling, while the fog slowly dissipates under the morning sun. Marines use the time to bring in more troops, more supplies, more ammunition. The beachhead is secure now, but secure is relative. Japanese mortars still fall every few minutes. Snipers still catch careless men. But the indiscriminate killing of the first day has stopped. The Japanese are conserving ammunition, falling back to deeper positions, preparing for the long, bloody fight Kurabayashi planned. At 10 in the morning, the fog dissipates enough for operations. Donovan receives new orders. His Zippo unit will support the 4th Marine Division in an assault toward Airfield No. 1. It's a flat area in the south-central island, relatively open, but heavily defended by bunkers and trench positions. Intelligence estimates between 200 and 300 Japanese soldiers entrenched along the approach to the airfield. They have to be eliminated before the advance can continue. The Zippos advance in line, spaced 50 meters apart, with Marines following behind using the tanks as mobile cover. It's a standard infantry tactic supported by armor, but with a twist. These armored vehicles don't fire explosive shells. They fire burning liquid death that can reach around corners, down into foxholes, into rock crevices, and incinerate everything it touches. The first enemy position is a series of zigzag trenches dug into the volcanic sand and reinforced with sandbags and wooden logs. Japanese Type 99 machine guns open fire from both ends of the trench, targeting advancing Marines. 24 men fall in the first 10 seconds. Survivors throw themselves to the ground, looking for cover that doesn't exist. Donovan doesn't wait for orders. He knows what needs to be done. Wu aligns his sight on the left end of the trench and fires a long 5-second jet. The napalm falls into the trench like rain of fire. It spreads along the bottom, climbs the walls, drips from the sandbags. The wooden logs ignite instantly. Japanese soldiers in the trench have maybe 3 seconds to react. Some try to climb out and are shot down by rifle fire. Others press themselves against the trench walls trying to escape the flames, but napalm is everywhere. It sticks to their uniforms, sticks to their weapons, sticks to their skin. 17 men die in that trench in less than 20 seconds. Zippo No. 3 takes the right end with similar results. The entire position is neutralized before the Japanese can even adjust their fire. Marines get up and advance, passing by bodies still burning, the smell of charred flesh mixed with the more chemical smell of napalm. Some of the younger Marines vomit. They've never smelled anything like this. Never seen men die like this. But they keep moving because stopping means dying. The next defensive line is just 100 meters ahead. More bunkers. More trenches. More Japanese soldiers determined to sell their lives as dearly as possible. But now they're facing a weapon that eliminates courage, determination, the Bushido code. You can't fight fire with spirit. You can't overcome napalm with willpower. You just burn and die, and then the next man burns and dies, and then the next until no one is left. The advance toward Airfield No. 1 takes 6 hours. 6 hours of continuous combat, the Zippos destroying position after position, Marines occupying conquered ground, engineers arriving behind them to clear explosive traps and mines. At 4 in the afternoon, the 4th Marine Division reaches the edge of the airfield. It cost 187 dead Marines and over 400 wounded. But without the Zippos, it would have cost double. Maybe triple. Each bunker the Zippos destroyed in minutes would have taken hours to clear with conventional explosives and infantry tactics. Each hour saved is lives saved. It's brutal mathematics, but it's the mathematics of war. Kurabayashi watches the American advance from his underground command post in the north of the island. He receives reports every hour from sector commanders. The reports all say the same thing. The fire tanks are destroying his defenses faster than he anticipated. Positions that should have held the Americans for days are falling in hours. Bunkers that survived days of naval bombardment are being eliminated in minutes. And his troops' morale is beginning to crack. Japanese soldiers are trained to accept death. But not this way. Not burned alive, helpless, screaming as their skin melts. It's a death that offends something primal in the human spirit. It's a death men fear more than bullets, more than bayonets, more even than bombs. Kurabayashi knows he needs to do something. Needs to find a way to neutralize the fire tanks or they'll break his defense in weeks instead of months. He summons his best engineers and artillery officers. Together, they devise a plan. The tanks are armored, but not indestructible. Direct artillery fire can penetrate their armor. Anti-tank grenades can disable their treads. And most importantly, they have an obvious weak point: the fuel tanks. If you can hit the fuel tanks with anything that generates heat or sparks, the entire tank transforms into a fireball. The problem is getting close enough. The Zippos never operate alone. They're always surrounded by Marines who will kill anyone who approaches. Always backed up by other Sherman tanks with main guns that can destroy enemy positions at 500 meters. Always moving, never staying still long enough to become easy targets. Kurabayashi orders his men to focus on the Zippos whenever possible. Ignore the infantry. Ignore the regular tanks. If you see a fire tank, throw everything you have at it. Artillery, anti-tank grenades, demolition charges, anything. Destroy them before they destroy you. The first serious Japanese attempt to destroy a Zippo comes on the third day. A 75mm gun hidden in a deep cave waits until Zippo number 5 passes directly in front of its position at 60 meters away. The Japanese gunner, a veteran named Hiroshi Tanaka, trained on this weapon for 7 years. He can hit a barrel-sized target at 300 meters. 60 meters is almost impossible to miss. He pulls the firing cord. The gun recoils violently. The shell crosses the space between cave and tank so fast that no one even sees it. It strikes the Zippo's side armor exactly where Tanaka aimed, directly over the estimated location of the fuel tanks. There's a loud metallic impact sound. Sparks fly. The Zippo's crew feels the blow like a giant punch to the side of the tank. But the armor holds. The shell ricocheted. It left a large dent in the armor, but didn't penetrate. Tanaka doesn't have time for a second shot. 75mm shells from 3 regular Sherman tanks explode around his cave position. One enters directly through the opening and detonates inside, instantly killing Tanaka and his 2 loaders. The Zippo continues advancing, its crew not even realizing how close they came to death. The Japanese try again on the 4th day. This time with a demolition team. 5 men, each carrying backpacks full of Type 99 explosives, waiting in a tunnel that emerges near a known American tank route. The plan is simple: wait until a Zippo passes, run out, attach the charges to the fuel tanks, detonate. All 5 men will die, but will destroy the fire tank in the process. It's a sacrifice Kurabayashi considers acceptable. The 5 men wait for 3 hours in the dark tunnel, listening to the muffled sound of battle above. Finally they hear the unmistakable roar of a tank engine approaching. They burst out of the tunnel entrance and run toward the Zippo, shouting banzai, ready to die for the glory of the Emperor. Marines shoot them down before they run 10 meters. 5 bodies fall on the volcanic sand, their unexploded explosive charges. A Marine sergeant cautiously approaches, sees the backpacks, realizes what they were trying to do. He calls a bomb squad that carefully removes the explosives and uses them later to demolish a Japanese bunker. Even the dead Japanese serve the Marines at Iwo Jima. On the 5th day, the Japanese achieve their first Zippo kill. Not through tactics. Not through courage. But through sheer terrible luck. Zippo number 7 was navigating through an area that combat engineers had declared clear of mines. But they missed one. A 500-kilogram naval mine buried just 12 inches below the surface, forgotten on a map, undetected in a sweep. The Zippos left tread passes directly over it. The explosion is massive. It lifts the 33-ton tank completely off the ground and throws it sideways. The bottom armor, the thinnest on the tank, is torn apart. The explosion penetrates into the crew compartment and hits the fuel tanks. 490 liters of napalm explode simultaneously. The Zippo transforms into a fireball that rises 50 feet in the air. The temperature inside the tank reaches over 2,000 degrees Celsius. The 5-man crew dies instantly, vaporized by the initial explosion before they can even register what's happening. The tank burns for 40 minutes before the fire finally goes out. When recovery teams finally manage to approach, there's nothing to recover. The tank is a melted, twisted hull. The men inside are ashes. Sergeant Donovan sees the smoke column from his position half a kilometer away. He knew the commander of Zippo number 7. They played poker together in Hawaii. The man had 3 children at home in North Carolina. Now those 3 children are orphans. Donovan has no time for grief. No time for anger. He has a job to do. He clenches his fists, takes the grief to a deep place inside himself where it can be processed later, and continues with the war. The 7 remaining Zippos continue operating with mechanical efficiency. They become the nightmare that haunts every Japanese soldier at Iwo Jima. You can be safe in your bunker, meter-thick concrete walls between you and the outside world, and then hear the roar of a tank engine approaching. You peer through your gun port and see the menacing tube pointing in your direction. You know what comes next. You have maybe 5 seconds to pray, make peace with your death, accept your fate. Then the world transforms into fire. Some men try to flee. They run to the rear exits of bunkers, to tunnel entrances, anywhere away from the flames. But the Marines are waiting. They know men will flee from fire. They're positioned at every likely exit with rifles ready. It's a choice between burning alive or being shot. Most men choose the bullet. On the 10th day of battle, Marines took Mount Suribachi. The iconic flag-raising photograph is taken at the top, 6 men raising the American flag while battle still rages across the island below them. It's a symbolic moment. An image that will define the Battle of Iwo Jima for generations. But reality is much less glorious. Suribachi cost 800 dead Marines. The island is still only 30% under American control. Over 15,000 Japanese soldiers are still alive, still fighting, still determined to make every meter of ground cost American blood. And to the north, in the most heavily fortified part of the island, Kurabayashi is waiting with his best troops and his strongest defenses. The really bloody part of the battle is still to come. The Zippos prove even more valuable in the northern terrain of the island. Here the landscape is a nightmare of deep ravines, rocky outcrops, and cave systems that snake through rock like 3-dimensional labyrinths. Each ravine is a kill zone. Each rocky outcrop hides machine guns. Each cave connects to dozens of other caves through tunnels that allow the Japanese to disappear from one position and reappear in another without ever exposing themselves to fire. Conventional infantry tactics don't work here. You can't just attack. You die before advancing 10 meters. You can't surround. The tunnels allow defenders to escape and reinforce from unexpected directions. You can't bombard. Too many of the tunnels are too deep, the caves too protected by solid rock. But you can burn. The Zippos move systematically from cave to cave, pouring napalm into every opening. The fire runs through the tunnels like a liquid river, following every passage, filling every chamber, consuming all oxygen, transforming the entire interconnected cave system into a giant oven. Japanese soldiers 50 meters from the original cave die suffocated when flames consume the oxygen in tunnels they thought were safe. Others die burned when burning napalm flows through passages and drips from the ceiling onto their heads. Some manage to escape to the surface, only to be shot by waiting Marines. It's methodical, merciless cleaning warfare. There's nothing heroic about it. Nothing glorious. It's just industrial killing, systematic application of superior lethal force until every enemy is dead. But it's effective. Incredibly, terribly effective. A cave position that would have taken a week to clear with conventional tactics is neutralized in an hour with the Zippos. A tunnel complex that could have held up an entire battalion for days is transformed into a burning tomb in an afternoon. American lives are saved. Japanese lives are lost. The brutal mathematics of war continues. Yamamoto is still alive on the 20th day. He has moved from position to position, constantly retreating north as the Americans advance. He has watched 3/4 of his original company die. He has seen friends burned alive. He has seen men he knew from basic training turned into screaming, running, pleading for death human torches. He has seen what napalm does to the human body, and it has broken something inside him. Not his determination, not his loyalty to the emperor, but his faith that there was any meaning in all of this, any purpose, any honor. He has seen men die bravely in combat and accepted it as the fate of soldiers. But he has seen men die burning in holes while helplessly screaming, and he cannot reconcile that with any code of honor he was ever taught. This is not the death of samurais. This is the death of rats trapped in a burning barn. Sergeant Saito is dead. He died 4 days ago when napalm filled the bunker they shared. Saito was near the entrance. He took the brunt of the fire. Yamamoto was deeper, in a side chamber. He was shielded by Sato's body. Sometimes Yamamoto wishes he had been closer to the entrance. Wishes he had died quickly in that moment instead of continuing this miserable existence, moving from hole to hole, eating spoiled rations, drinking dirty puddle water from caves, waiting for the day the flame tanks finally find him. He has no more ammunition for his Arisaka rifle. He fired his last bullet 3 days ago. Now he carries only a bayonet and 2 Type 97 grenades. When the Americans come, he will throw his grenades and then charge with his bayonet and die the way a soldier should die. In combat, facing the enemy. Not burned alive like an animal. On the night of the 22nd day, Kurabayashi sends his last radio message to Tokyo. It is short. It is factual. It is the message of a man who accepts his fate. The situation is grave. The enemy has advanced north using flame tanks that our men cannot withstand. I fear we cannot hold out for more than 2 more weeks. We will continue fighting until the last man. Long live the Emperor. Tokyo does not reply. There is nothing to say. Iwo Jima is lost. Everyone knows it. All that remains is to see how long Kurabayashi can make the Americans bleed. The Zippos continue their methodical work. By the 25th day, they have destroyed over 800 enemy positions. By the 30th day, over 900. Each position represents between 5 and 20 dead Japanese soldiers. Do the math and you begin to understand why 30% of all Japanese casualties on Iwo Jima are attributed to the flamethrower tanks. 30% of 21,000 soldiers. Over 6,000 men. 6,000 lives taken by 8 tanks and their successors. It is difficult to comprehend that scale of killing. Difficult to imagine the cumulative horror of 6,000 men burning to death. But to the Marines fighting on Iwo Jima, it is simple. Every Japanese soldier killed by a Zippo is a soldier who is not shooting at Marines. Every bunker destroyed by napalm is a bunker that doesn't have to be assaulted with demolitions and suicidal courage. Every cave burned out is a cave that isn't going to cost a dozen American lives to clear. The Zippos are saving Marines. Thousands of them. Estimates vary, but most military historians agree that the flame tanks saved at least 5,000 American lives on Iwo Jima. 5,000 men who would have died clearing bunkers with explosives. 5,000 men who went home to their families instead of being buried in the Pacific National Cemetery. On the 33rd day, the Marines reach Bloody Gorge, the final major defensive position on the island. It is a deep ravine at the northern tip, surrounded on all sides by volcanic rock cliffs. Kurabayashi is inside with the last 1,500 soldiers of his garrison. They have ammunition for perhaps 3 days of heavy fighting. They have food for less than that. But they have determination. They have pride. And they have their commander's final order. Do not surrender. Do not retreat. Fight to the last man. Die with honor. The Zippos are positioned around the rim of the gorge. Marines set up supporting positions every 50 yards. Artillery pounds the inside of the gorge for 6 hours, softening the defenses, destroying what it can. Then, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the Zippos open fire. 7 tanks simultaneously dumping napalm into the ravine from 7 different angles. It is a scene from hell. The napalm rains down like fire, dripping off the cliffs, collecting on the floor of the gorge, running into tunnels and caves. The temperature inside the ravine soars above 800 degrees Celsius within minutes. Men cook inside their positions. The air becomes so hot it sears lungs just to breathe. Japanese soldiers try to scale the cliffs to escape and are shot. Others try to dig deeper into the rock and suffocate as the oxygen is consumed. Some simply sit and wait for the end, singing patriotic songs as the fire closes in. The napalm barrage continues for 15 minutes. 15 minutes of continuous flame dumped into the ravine from 7 directions. When it finally stops, the floor of Bloody Gorge is coated with burning napalm that continues to burn for another 2 hours. The smoke is so thick it obscures the sun. The smell is unbearable, a mix of burning napalm, scorched rock, and charred human flesh. When Marines finally descend into the gorge the next day, they find over 700 bodies. Some are merely ash. Others are carbonized but recognizably human, frozen in positions of agony. Some are still holding weapons. One Japanese soldier is frozen in the act of trying to crawl, his hand outstretched toward a tunnel he never reached. It is a sight that will haunt the Marines who witness it for the rest of their lives. Yamamoto was not at Bloody Gorge. He was in a small bunker a half-mile to the east, part of a rearguard position meant to provide covering fire during the final stand. But the final stand ended far faster than anyone expected. Now Yamamoto is alone. There are no more orders. No more chain of command. No more mission except to survive one more day. But he no longer wants to survive. He is tired. Tired of being afraid. Tired of hunger. Tired of hearing the roar of tank engines and knowing it might mean fire. Tired of living like a rat, hiding in holes, moving only at night, drinking his own urine when there is no water. On the 36th day, he hears a tank engine approaching his position. He peeks through his bunker slit and sees a Zippo, moving slowly, hunting for targets. Marines follow behind it, minesweepers in front, machine guns ready. Yamamoto picks up his 2 grenades. He weighs them in his hands. He could throw the grenades at the tank. It probably wouldn't do anything, but it is a gesture. A final statement of defiance. Or he could use the grenades on himself. A quick death. A death on his own terms. He chooses the latter. He pulls the pin on one grenade and holds it against his chest. He has 5 seconds. 5 seconds to think of his home in Osaka. His mother who will never know how he died. His father who will receive a letter saying he died with honor for the glory of the emperor. But there is no honor here. There is no glory. There is only death and fire, and the terrible certainty that it was all for nothing. The grenade explodes. Yamamoto ceases to exist. The Zippo continues past, its crew not even noticing the small bunker or the muffled explosion within. Later that day, a Marine squad checks the bunker and finds parts of a body. They do not bother to identify it. Just another dead Japanese among thousands. They move on. Iwo Jima is officially declared secure by American command. Secure is a strange word for an island where skirmishing continues for weeks, where Japanese soldiers occasionally emerge from hidden tunnels for suicide attacks, where combat engineers are still finding and disarming mines and booby traps. But secure means the organized resistance is over. It means Marines can move across the island without being cut down by hidden machine guns. It means airfields can be built, bases established, wounded evacuated. It means the battle has been won, even if the mop-up continues for months. The final cost is staggering. 6,821 American Marines killed. 19,217 wounded. 26,000 casualties to take an 8-square-mile island. It is the bloodiest battle in Marine Corps history. Every square yard of Iwo Jima cost, on average, 1 Marine killed or wounded. On the Japanese side, the carnage is even worse. 20,933 dead. Only 1,083 prisoners, most of them too badly wounded to commit suicide. A 94% death rate. Kurabayashi was never found. No body was ever definitively identified as his. American intelligence believes he committed ritual suicide at some point during the last days of the battle, likely in a deep tunnel that was sealed by explosions or rockfalls. His body is probably still there, buried under tons of volcanic rock, along with thousands of his men. The 7 surviving Zippos are shipped back to Hawaii after the battle. They have done their job. They have proven their worth beyond any doubt. They have proven that flamethrower tanks are not just effective, but absolutely critical for island combat against heavily entrenched defenses. The Marine Corps immediately orders 347 additional flamethrower tanks. Production is fast-tracked. Factories in Detroit and Pittsburgh work around the clock converting standard Shermans to the flamethrower configuration. The CB-H-1 system is refined, improved, made even more deadly. The range is extended to 180 yards through improvements in the pressurization system. Fuel capacity is increased to 143 gallons. Armor is reinforced around the fuel tanks after the loss of Zippo No. 7. Every lesson learned on Iwo Jima is incorporated into the new tanks. Every flaw is corrected. Every strength is amplified. The flame tanks arrive in Okinawa in April 1945. 60 Zippos support the invasion, applying the lessons of Iwo Jima on an even greater scale. Okinawa has even more tunnels, even more caves, even more concrete bunkers than Iwo Jima. It is the perfect Japanese defense and the perfect target for flamethrower warfare. The Zippos destroy over 3,000 enemy positions on Okinawa. 3,000. The number is so large it almost loses meaning. But every one of those positions represents American lives saved. Every bunker burned out is a bunker that didn't massacre a platoon of Marines. Every cave destroyed is a cave that didn't become a tomb for Marines. Conservative estimates suggest that flamethrower tanks saved 15,000 American lives on Okinawa. 15,000 men who went home instead of being buried on foreign soil. 15,000 families who did not receive telegrams starting with, "We regret to inform you." The war in the Pacific ends in August 1945 when atomic bombs fall on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan surrenders unconditionally. The planned invasion of the Japanese home islands, Operation Downfall, is cancelled. But all the plans for downfall included hundreds of flame tanks. They would have been the primary weapon for clearing the elaborate defenses the Japanese had prepared on every invasion beach. American intelligence estimated downfall would cost 500,000 American lives. Maybe more. The Zippos would have reduced that number. Impossible to say by how much. But based on Iwo Jima and Okinawa, reasonable estimates suggest they could have saved 100,000 lives. 100,000. It is a hard number to grasp. But try. Think of 100,000 young American men. 100,000 sons, brothers, fathers, husbands. 100,000 lives that would have ended on the beaches of Japan. Now imagine 100,000 families receiving telegrams. 100,000 funerals. 100,000 graves. 100,000 absences at the dinner table, in the living room, in the marriage bed. The flame tanks didn't just kill Japanese soldiers. They saved American families. They saved futures. They saved generations of people who exist today because their grandfathers came home from the war alive instead of coming home in coffins. Donovan survived the war. He commanded his Zippo through Iwo Jima and Okinawa without a scratch. Pure luck, he always said. Luck and a great crew. After the war, he went back to Michigan and never talked about what he did. Never told his children about the bunkers he destroyed or the men he killed. When asked about the war, He would simply say he was a tank operator and change the subject. But sometimes at night, his wife would hear him screaming in his sleep. Screaming names. Screaming orders. Waking up in cold sweats, shaking, unable to explain the terror that still pursued him decades after the fighting stopped. Wu survived too. He returned to San Francisco, opened a restaurant, lived a long, quiet life. But he could never be near open flame without feeling something primal twist in his stomach. The smell of grilling meat on a barbecue would make him nauseous. He had to leave the kitchen whenever his cooks used culinary flamethrowers. His grandchildren never understood why Grandpa always looked pale at barbecues. Most of the Zippo crews never spoke about their experiences. Not to families. Not to friends. Certainly not to psychologists or counselors, who barely existed for veterans in the 1940s. They carried their memories in silence, locked their horrors away in deep places in their minds, and tried to live normal lives. Some succeeded. Others did not. The alcoholism rate among flame tank crews was 3 times the national average. The divorce rate was twice as high. The suicide rate was 4 times higher. Killing men with fire leaves marks on the psyche that never truly heal. But they did what they felt they had to do. They did what they were ordered. They used the most terrible weapon in the American arsenal to shorten the war, save American lives, and ensure victory. And in their minds, that was justification enough. The M4A3R3 flame tanks remained in active service with the Marine Corps until 1951. They saw limited action in the Korean War, mostly destroying North Korean and Chinese bunkers. But the terrain in Korea was not as well suited for tank operations as the Pacific Islands. And the Korean winters played havoc with the flamethrower systems, the napalm becoming too viscous in freezing temperatures to be pumped effectively. The era of the flame tank ended not because the weapon became ineffective, but because the nature of war changed. Counterinsurgency conflicts in Vietnam and beyond favored different weapons. Napalm bombs dropped from aircraft could cover larger areas with less risk to American personnel. Improved man-portable flamethrowers had longer ranges and were easier to transport across jungle terrain. And increasingly, the world was becoming uncomfortable with incendiary weapons. International conventions began to restrict the use of napalm. Public protests against the Vietnam War often highlighted flamethrowers as particularly cruel and inhuman. The very characteristics that made the Zippos so effective on Iwo Jima, their ability to inflict horrifying, inescapable death, made them politically unacceptable in the modern age. The last M4A3R3 flame tank was retired from active service in 1978. Most were scrapped. A few were preserved in museums. You can see one today at the National Museum of the Marine Corps in Triangle, Virginia. It sits in pristine display condition, polished and clean, its flamethrower snout pointing at the ceiling, surrounded by explanatory plaques that describe its technical specifications and service history. But the plaques cannot convey the terror this tank inspired. They cannot make you feel the heat of napalm 150 yards away. They cannot make you smell the unique and nauseating blend of burned fuel and charred human flesh. They cannot make you hear the screams of men burning alive. They cannot make you understand what it meant to be on either end of this weapon. The numbers tell the story clinically. 8 tanks multiplied by dozens more later. 1,000 bunkers destroyed on Iwo Jima. 3,000 on Okinawa. 6,000 Japanese soldiers killed by napalm in a single battle. 5,000 American lives saved. 30% of all Japanese casualties attributed to a single weapon. 354 flame tanks produced in total. 63 lost in combat. 2,487 crewmen serving in combat operations. 193 killed. 457 wounded. Numbers. Cold. Objective. They do not capture the human reality. But there is another way to measure the impact of the Zippos. Not in kills or destroyed bunkers, but in lives saved. In grandfathers who came home and had children who had children who had children. In family trees that continued instead of being cut short on the beaches of Iwo Jima. Think about it. 5,000 lives saved on Iwo Jima. Each of those men potentially having 2 or 3 children. Each of those children having 2 or 3 children of their own. 2 generations, and you have tens of thousands of people whose existence is a direct result of a weapon that freed them from having to assault Japanese bunkers with demolitions. 3 generations, and you have hundreds of thousands. These people do not know they owe their lives to the Zippos. They do not know their grandfathers would have died without flame tanks. They do not know that their existence is a ripple effect of napalm burning Japanese soldiers to death in caves in 1945. But that is the truth. History is not just made up of grand decisions and famous battles. It is made up of 1,000 small technologies and innovations that cumulatively changed the course of events. The flame tanks were one of those innovations. A simple idea, mounting a flamethrower on a tank, executed with engineering excellence and deployed with tactical competence. That simple idea saved thousands of lives. It shortened the war in the Pacific. It made it possible to capture islands that would have otherwise cost tens of thousands of casualties. And by doing so, it fundamentally changed the nature of the Pacific War. After Iwo Jima, the Japanese knew they couldn't win. They knew no bunker was strong enough, no cave deep enough, no defense ingenious enough to stop the Americans. The Americans had napalm. They had the Zippos. They had a weapon that could reach inside any fortification and turn it into a furnace. That realization, that resistance was fundamentally futile in the face of such power, likely played a role in the Japanese deliberations that led to surrender. Not the primary role. The atomic bombs were the decisive factor. But the atomic bombs were just the most extreme manifestation of something the Zippos had already proven, that America possessed both the industrial power and the will to apply violence on a scale that Japan could neither match nor endure. Today, nearly 80 years later, Iwo Jima is quiet. The island partially reverted to Japan in 1968 as part of the Okinawa reversion. It is officially known by its Japanese name, Ioto. Some of Kurabayashi's bunkers and tunnels are still there, preserved as historical memorials. You can descend into some of the caves and see the blackened walls where the napalm burned. You can see the concrete cracked by the extreme heat. You can still, if you know where to look, find fragments of Japanese equipment melted into unrecognizable shapes by 1,000-degree flames. Memorial ceremonies are held annually by Japanese and American veterans. The few survivors who are still alive, now in their 90s, make the journey back to the island where they fought. They stand side by side, former enemies united by the shared experience of surviving one of the most brutal fights in history. Some American veterans visit the bunkers they destroyed. They stand in front of the concrete openings and remember the day they pulled a trigger and sent fire pouring through those openings. Some pray. Some cry. Some simply stand in silence, processing 70-year-old memories that are still vivid as if they happened yesterday. Japanese veterans visit the caves where their comrades died. They leave offerings. They burn incense. They recite Buddhist prayers for the dead. And perhaps they wonder, as Yamamoto wondered in his final moments, if there was any purpose to it all. Any meaning. Any honor in being burned alive in a hole while defending an island everyone knew was lost. The answers to those questions depend on who you ask. Some will say the defense of Iwo Jima was noble, that Kurabayashi and his men fought with extraordinary courage against impossible odds, that they sold their lives as dearly as humanly possible. Others will say it was pointless, that 20,000 men died for nothing, that the island was lost from the moment the first American ships appeared on the horizon, that courage has no value when the cause is lost. Both perspectives have merit. Both are true from different angles. War contains multitudes of contradictory truths. But there is one truth that is undeniable. The flame tanks changed Iwo Jima. They changed how battles were fought in the Pacific. They changed the balance between offense and defense. They changed the calculation of how many American lives would have to be sacrificed to take heavily defended islands. And by doing so, they changed the course of the war. History remembers Iwo Jima for the flag-raising photograph. It remembers Mount Suribachi. It remembers Admiral Nimitz's famous quote, Among the Americans who served on Iwo Island, uncommon valor was a common virtue. But it should also remember the Zippos. The 8 tanks that rolled ashore on Yellow Beach 2 that February morning. The secret weapon that turned impenetrable bunkers into death traps. The men who operated those terrible weapons and carried the weight of using them for the rest of their lives. It should remember because forgetting makes war seem cleaner than it really is. It makes it seem like it's about courage and sacrifice and noble ideals. And it is about those things. But it is also about napalm and flames and men burning alive in caves. It is about innovation applied to killing. It is about industrial efficiency in death. It is about finding better ways to kill people so that your own people are less likely to die. That is the naked, brutal truth of modern warfare. And the flame tanks of Iwo Jima are the perfect example. The engineers who designed the CBH-1 system were not monsters. They were patriots trying to save American lives. The Zippo crews were not sadists. They were soldiers following orders, using the tools they were given, doing the job that needed to be done. The generals who ordered the extensive use of flamethrowers were not cruel. They were commanders making tactical choices to minimize casualties among their own troops. Everyone involved had legitimate reasons for their actions. Everyone was doing what they thought was right. And the result was 6,000 men burned to death. That is the central contradiction of war. Decent people doing terrible things for defensible reasons. Courage and horror existing simultaneously. Heroism stained with atrocity. Victory achieved through means that haunt the victors for the rest of their lives. Iwo Jima was one. 26,000 American Marines were killed or wounded taking it. 21,000 Japanese soldiers died defending it. And among all the weapons that decided that bloody battle, the naval guns, the artillery, the tanks, the rifles, the grenades, it was the Zippos that made victory possible in 36 days instead of 3 months. It was the flame tanks that broke the seemingly impenetrable Japanese defenses. It was Colonel Unmac's 8 secret tanks that changed everything. This is their story. Not a story of glory or heroism, although there was both. Not a story of villainy or cruelty, although both existed. But a story of war in its purest, most terrible form. Of men using the most horrifying weapons they can devise because the alternative is worse. Of innovation applied to destruction. Of efficiency measured in lives taken and lives saved. Of victory achieved at a cost no one should ever have to pay, but which thousands paid anyway because there was no choice. That is the story of Iwo Jima. That is the story of the Zippos. And it is a story we should not forget, no matter how much it hurts to remember.